Hello everyone, this is CA Devang Kothari and I welcome you to Tech-O-Logy. Tech-O-Logy. Now what is the Tech-O-Logy? Well, Enterprise Information System, your subject of EIS. Yeah, it has various interesting terms and interesting concepts in the entire subject, right? So Tech-O-Logy is my series of short videos where I discuss about various interesting terms in your subject of EIS. Yeah, so I'll be coming up with many such small videos regarding various interesting topics, interesting discussions in your subject of EIS. All of them will be a couple of minutes, small sessions only, right? My term for today is gonna be a term called as blockchain. I'm sure that you might have heard of this blockchain, and it is the in thing right now, like in the news channels, in media, and in social media, and everywhere you might have heard about this word called blockchain. Well, fortunately now ICAI has introduced this concept in your syllabus itself. So what exactly is blockchain and where is it used? Well, let us find that out. So what exactly is blockchain? Basically blockchain is a method of maintaining record of transactions. Yeah, it is simply a method of maintaining record of transactions. Let's see the details. It is basically to maintain records by following a concept called as distributed ledger technology. Distributed ledger technology. This means that whatever transaction record you want to maintain, it is not maintained in a central server. See, normally any transactions recorded in any company, it goes to the central server of the company. Well, under blockchain concept, there is no central server. Rather, the transactions are recorded in a distributed ledger. Now, what does that mean? Well, it means that say there is a network of 100 people who are members of the blockchain. If there is a network of 100 people who are the members of the blockchain, then the transactions are not recorded in any one single central server. No, the transactions are distributed among these 100 members of the blockchain. Yeah, so the transaction is not entirely existing at one place. It is distributed over this entire network of 100 people. It creates a public database. So this means that the database does not lie in the central server. Database is with the public. Public, when I say public, public means all the members of that blockchain, all the members of the network. Plus, the speciality about this is that every transaction is also validated by the public. Now, I'll give you an example later to understand each of these things, but first, let us see the keywords here. Every transaction will be validated by the public. Now, when I say by the public means by, again, the members of the blockchain. And once the validation is complete, then the transaction will be added to the chain of blocks. So that's why it's called as a blockchain. Yeah. So once the transaction is validated, it is added to the chain of blocks. And once it is added to the chain of the blocks, then you can never change or edit or update that transaction. No, that becomes a permanent entry into the blockchain. So this transaction now becomes read-only data. Nobody, absolutely nobody can make changes to that. Now this concept is used at various places. It can be used at various places. Like say for example, it can be used for property registration, or it can be used for Bitcoin transactions. As of now, it is very commonly used in case of Bitcoin transactions. Bitcoin, you might have heard of, cryptocurrency, right? So blockchain is not used only for Bitcoin. It is a concept which can be used at many places. Let's say for example, property registration. Say Mr. A transfers property to Mr. B. Yeah. Now normally in India, whenever property is transferred, building transferred, house transferred, or office transferred, yes, so in India, whenever property is transferred from one person to another person, there is a property registrar who maintains all the records of property transfers, right? The property registrar maintains records of all the property transfers. So when Mr. A transfers his property to Mr. B, then this transfer is recorded in the register of the properties. Yeah, that is property registrar की office पे it will be recorded. You need to go to that sub registrar office, and sub registrar की office में जाके उधर आपको property transfer का formalities you need to do, right? Well, what does that property registrar what does the officer at the registrar do? Well, that person at the registrar office has to ensure that whether this transaction is done correctly or not. Plus, he must also ensure that whether Mr. A was the legal owner of the property or not. Yeah, because अगर A अपना property B को transfer कर रहा है, then the registrar has to first ensure that कि वो A का property actual में A का property है कि नहीं है. Right? So he has to ensure that whether A is the legal owner of the property. If yes, then they will record the transfer in name of A to B. So now in the property registrar server, it gets recorded that the property is purchased by Mr. B. Now Mr. B is the owner of the property. Now this is happening in terms of the normal recording system in which this transaction gets saved in the central server of property registrar. So who can access this transaction? Only the members of the registrar, matlab only the officer of the registrar can access these transactions. However, if that same transaction is recorded under blockchain, then socho, in that case, there is no central server, there is no central property registrar. Rather, it is a distributed ledger technology. Distributed ledger means that all the data is not stored at one central location. All the data gets stored in a public database. Imagine as if there is a Google sheet. You know Excel sheet? But Excel sheet on Google will become a Google sheet. Imagine there is a Google sheet in which anybody can update the data, but nobody can change the data which is already there. Yeah. So imagine there is a Google sheet in which it is written that A is the owner of this property and A is now transferring the property to B. So A is putting an entry that chalo, I am transferring property to B. But when A is putting that entry in the Google sheet, that entry does not get permanently added unless all the other users of Google Sheet will validate that transaction. Yeah, so this time validation is not done by the registrar of property. No, validation is done by all the members who are using that Google Sheet. Yeah, so apart from Mr. A and Mr. B, there might be so many other people who will be having access to that Google Sheet. So every person who has access to that Google Sheet will be validating this transaction. Every person will check that whether A is the legal owner of the property or not, and after thorough investigation, after there is a consensus meaning all the members of the blockchain should come to a consensus. They all should come to a conclusion that yes, A was the owner of the property, and yes, A has done transfer to B, and yes, A has received money against that transfer. If all the things are ensured by all the members of the blockchain, then this means that the transaction got validated by the public. So it is not validated by the registrar, it is validated by the general public. And once it is validated, then it is added in the blockchain. This is my concept about blockchain. Same thing can also apply in case of Bitcoin transfers. Let's say A is transferring 10 Bitcoins to B. If A transfers 10 Bitcoins to Mr. B, then the public will first verify that whether A was holding 10 Bitcoins or not. In fact, they will also verify that A obtained these 10 Bitcoins from whom. They have to verify, they have to validate not just the ownership of Mr. A, they have to also validate the source where Mr. A got that Bitcoin from. Because Mr. A did not himself create the Bitcoin, Mr. A must have got the Bitcoins from someone. Plus, he might have got 2 Bitcoins from somebody else, 3 from somebody else, 5 from somebody else. So all those previous transactions of Mr. A also must be validated. All that validation is done by the public, and see, that's what makes validation process very complicated. Plus, you need consensus from all the members of the blockchain. It's not that one person will validate and it will be considered as a valid transaction. No, when all the people will validate, then it is considered as a valid transaction. So there arises a need to have a consensus among all the members who are checking the transaction. Consensus मतलब अगर सारे members जो transaction check करे, if all of them come to a common conclusion, सबका opinion same आए, only then it will be considered as a consensus. And once that happens, then the transaction will be validated and that transaction will be added to the block. व्हेन आई से एडेड टू द ब्लॉक, मतलब के ट्रांजैक्शन को डिस्ट्रीब्यूटेड लेजर में आपने डाल दिया, या तो जो डिस्ट्रीब्यूटेड लेजर में एक बार ट्रांजैक्शन वैलिडेट हो गया, नाउ दैट ट्रांजैक्शन कैन नेवर बी चेंज्ड, वो कभी चेंज नहीं होगा। अगर कोई चेंजेस करना है, रिवर्स करना है, तो रिवर्स करने के लिए आपको रिवर्स ट्रांजैक्शन दूसरा डालना पड़ेगा, पहला ट्रांजैक्शन तो एडिट होगा ही नहीं। यस, दिस is called as your blockchain concept. It can be used for property registration transactions, it can be used for bitcoin transfer transactions, it can be used for patient medical records, it can be used for various other aspects, various other things in the industry, right? So अपने syllabus में there is a detailed discussion that कि कहाँ पे ये blockchain concept use होता है. I have given only examples of 2 places, but चलो ये 2 examples के ऊपर से at least I'm sure आपको basic idea आ चुका होगा that what does blockchain mean. Done? Yes, जैसा मैंने बोला, these are a series of short videos. तो short videos में बस main core concept मैं deliver करना चाहता, तो I hope with this discussion blockchain का core concept आपको समझ आया. Yeah, that's all for now. That's all for right now. Until next time, thank you very much and bye bye.